Welcome to the Balanced Hustle podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Sherman, fitness coach for burnt out perfectionist. If you're ready to break free from overwhelm, simplify your nutrition, and make fitness finally work for you instead of against you, you're in the right place. Each week, we'll dive into easy strategies to balance your health with your busy life. Let's hustle for balance, not burnout. Grab a seat and let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I'm super excited about this week's episode because last week I chatted with my mom, and after listening to that podcast, I had a very close friend who I consider one of my second moms actually say that she wanted to join in and be on a podcast also, which I'm very excited about. She's a very, very smart lady. She has a list of titles and acronyms that I don't even know what they all mean. But among those are RN, MSN, MPH. She is a senior public health educator for Ontario County, where we live. And she's also a professor. She recently became a professor, which that's how you know she's super smart, in health communications at Nazareth College. So her name is Christy Richards, and I've known her my entire life. So I'm very excited to have her here. Do you want to say hi, Christy?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me, Miss Lindsay.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I think my podcast with Mom didn't scare her away, so that's a plus. Do you want to give a little brief introduction of yourself besides what I can do?
Sure. You did a beautiful job. Yes. So I've been a registered nurse for, so long, 25 plus years, I think. I do work for Ontario County Public Health. I have a master's in nursing and a master's in public health. I am a clinical lactation counselor. I am a birth educator. And I have spent my entire career supporting and helping women through all stages of life.
So, in other words, she basically knows everything, is what I think. She would probably disagree, but
Not the case.
Christy is the person in our family who, and you know, I see nurses like talk about this on TikTok and stuff, that people are always asking them the most random questions. But Christy's the one who we ask all of our random health questions to.
And because you're farmers, when you ask me random health questions, I always stop and really listen. Because farmers notoriously don't go to the doctors unless something is really wrong.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. So yeah, today that kind of ties into what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about mental health, specifically suicide prevention. So I just want to give everyone a heads up. I want to give you a trigger warning. These topics may be triggering for some people. If you are struggling, please dial 988, the suicide hotline. But yeah, we're talking about mental health today, and mental health is something I am obviously huge on my page, on my podcast. I have been in a place where I've been completely burnt out, stopped taking care of myself, felt like absolute crap about my body, about what I was eating. And I know Christy has some experience with burnout. Do you want to hit on your burnout?
Oh, sure. I think my story is very similar to a lot of other nurses out there. When you are working 12-hour shifts, as nurses, sometimes we're flopping 12-hour day and night shifts in the same week. We're expected to do on-call in intervals that are just extremely difficult, 16 hours at a time, 24 hours at the hospital, working 16, and then expected to sleep for 30 minutes and then go back to working. Anytime you're and having to use your brain at the same time, right?
Yeah.
That's the other piece. It's not just the physical having to move your body. It's having to use your brain and having so much responsibility at the same time. And then going home and balancing life at the same time. Raising little ones. In my case, I was raising a baby at the same time. So to save on daycare, I would leave the baby with my husband at night, and then I would go to work, and then we would switch responsibilities.
Yeah.
So there were days where I didn't sleep, 3, 4, 5 days in a row.
Yeah.
And I would just sit and shake. Your body can't continue to do that.
Right.
And I had those physical symptoms like what you were talking about, just being exhausted, feeling terrible about yourself, struggling getting things done at work, struggling getting things done at home. And then eventually that leading to burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would assume like you probably didn't feel present when you were home with your family because you're just trying to recover and survive, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, feeling like, you're not the best version of yourself at work. And you're not the best version of yourself at home. You've got things that need to be done. You've got children that need to be taken care of. And at the time we were trying to have another baby and really, really struggling with that, working through that and working with infertility specialists. And I found it wasn't until I dealt with that burnout, got out of that job and into a routine that I could handle that we were able to have Matthew.
Yeah.
On
That's
our own,
huge.
without fertility drugs.
That's
huge.
It
was all that burnout is so tough on your body.
Yeah. And like, you guys know, if you are a listener here or you follow my pages, that I talk about, routines and setting boundaries within your work, within your real life with other people. And some of these things, when we talk about them, it almost sounds so small and so silly. Like, oh, I'm showing you guys that I'm maybe journaling or I'm taking, a half an hour to read a novel at the end of the day. And that sounds silly, like when you just look at it. But when those things add up and when you start to neglect all those little things that connect you back with yourself and that take care of you so that you can take care of other people, that really adds up.
Yeah, fill your own cup.
Yeah.
The boundaries things that really hits me. I'm like almost 50 and I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
Having those boundaries and being like, nope, I can't work late tonight because I need to get home and do X, Y, and Z for my family.
Right.
I'm still working on that. And that could be the farming background, where if you're asked to give more, you give more and you get it done. You know? There's nobody else to do it. So you're just expected to do it. You're not expected to have downtime, right?
Yeah.
You have to just keep going and keep moving, and you must be productive at all times.
Yeah, I definitely feel that coming from the farming background. It was like, if I'm not doing something productive, I'm like, what am I doing?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
Do you feel, I talked about this a little bit with Mom, I think. Do you feel that as women, we have more of that pressure to like kind of be that person who says yes to things in order to like move up in our careers? Like, I don't feel like my husband really feels that pressure as much.
Interesting. Yeah, I totally understand exactly what you're saying. And yes, I have definitely felt that pressure. I have hope for the next generation of women coming through. I've got some folks that are younger than me, and they're able to set clearer boundaries than what I could ever want to set. And I'm so impressed by that. I so respect that. I'm working on it. I'm taking inspiration from them.
Yeah, it's almost like a trend I've seen on TikTok. It's like also like how to write an email that sets boundaries, like without exclamation points, to make people think that you're happy with them. You know what I mean? Like just being
ChatGPT does that for me on occasion.
Yes, I love ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the sponsor of today's episode. No, just kidding. I don't know if they do sponsors.
Or Copilot, either one will work.
Yeah, they're great. So you talked about how you were, obviously trying to have a kid.
Have our second
Was
baby.
that kind of your breaking point when things changed, or like how did that transition happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that might have been the breaking point. When you've gone through all of this, we had several losses. We had several miscarriages in between. And it wasn't that I couldn't get pregnant. It was that I couldn't stay pregnant. So what does that mean? What's happening within your body that means, you're having this stress. It's coming out. It's manifesting in some sort of a way. So that was happening at the same time. I was absolutely exhausted, not feeling fulfilled, not feeling like in my view of the world, I have to be constantly helping people and fixing things. And I felt like I was hitting a wall.
Yeah.
You know, I was seeing these social situations that people were in. They didn't have enough food. They didn't have enough means to take care of themselves, enough housing. And at the same time, I could see the bigger picture, and I wanted to help people at a larger level. That's what drew me to public health.
Yeah.
Was wanting to help people at a larger level. And the positive outcome from that was having a better schedule, having it fit into my life better, the burnout going away, and then being able to, you know, have Matthew in a normal, unstressed situation, you know?
It's like that, you know, when they tell you on a plane, like, you have to put on your own
So true.
oxygen mask before you can take care of anything else.
I know, it's so true. But as a mother, you're like, no, I have to save my baby. But
Right.
you're not going to do that baby any good if you don't save yourself.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you hit on the fact that, you know, you could get pregnant,
Yes.
but it was staying pregnant.
Exactly.
And it really relates to what I end up talking to about with my clients a lot. It relates back to the simplest thing of even like nutrition.
Yes.
Right? Like we can eat enough to survive.
I can't even tell you how bad that was.
Yeah.
I remember being on the night shift. So this is 7 at night to 7 in the morning. And I remember it being like 1 or 2 in the morning, and they were like, somebody said, I'm going to grab something to eat, because we didn't have like set like dinner times because people are having babies and stuff, you know?
Right.
So I was like, okay, but when is lunch?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's 2 in the morning. What is this considered? Is this lunch? Is this breakfast? What time do you eat? And I remember sitting down with the older nurses saying, what does your schedule look like when you're not here? Like, how do I fit in like food and sleep?
Yeah.
When I work overnights and then I'm supposed to sleep during the day? Because isn't it, if I go to bed at 8 o'clock in the morning and then I wake up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, isn't that really like waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day?
Right? Yeah, like what's happening here?
Yeah, exactly. I struggled with that and I never got used to it. I spent 8 years doing it and I never got used to it.
Yeah, that was like a huge thing. Like when I transitioned from my job in agriculture to my current day job that I have now, it was so funny. Like I had such small requests. Like I was like, do we get to eat lunch every day? Like, do we have, you don't have to pay me to eat lunch, but we have like a lunch hour. Like we talked about that when I interviewed.
Yeah.
And like you can eat enough to survive. Like
Right.
when I was working in agriculture, I was eating enough to survive. And my body was staying working at the minimum, but nothing was happening
You were
beyond
all
that.
bone.
Yeah, I was all bone.
were all
yes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
nothing
And I
was
was the
functioning
same
the
way.
way
Yeah.
like your hormones, your hair, everything's going to keeping you to surviving. And again, like relates
Yes.
back to maintaining a pregnancy. Your body's keeping you surviving.
Right.
It's not doing anything extra.
Right.
None of the fun stuff that we want.
Right, right. And I had all these like symptoms happening. I had heart palpitations. I had all this stuff. I wasn't sleeping when I could sleep, you know, and I was like going to the doctors, like, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel like this? Why am I so miserable? Why is my mental health suffering? Why is my physical health suffering? And they were like, well, when was the last time that you slept? And I was like, I don't really know the answer to that question. And then it was, take this pill,
Yeah.
because that'll help you sleep during the day.
Yeah.
You know, and I tried that. And that wasn't something I wanted to do in the long term.
Yeah, I think people are, I think there's a lot of ways social media can be damaging, right? But there's some ways where I see that it's really been really great, where I think people are starting to catch on to the fact that we should consider other things before we take pills.
Exactly.
Like, are we meeting the basics?
Right.
Essentials.
Right.
Eating, exercising, relaxing.
Right.
Like, because for years, I think they just push pills.
Right. And I don't think it's just eating. I think it's seeking out foods that are like nutritionally, you know, what our body needs. Getting away from things that are boxed and back into the kitchen again.
Well, I've talked about on here, like, I'm not ashamed to admit when I was working at the farm, I would just hit McDonald's every day on my way home.
Yeah.
Because I needed
It was
food.
easier.
And it was easy.
And I think at that point too, you're absolutely starving. By the time you're headed home, that stress level is starting to come down, and your body realizes, I am like really hungry here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you eat like those carbs and then you just pass out. And then it's like you wake up the next day and you're like trapped in a cycle.
One of the smartest things I ever had heard when I was in the on the nursing floor was one of the ICU nurses said, "I don't think you understand how dehydrated nurses are." And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? And she was like, we don't drink. We drink coffee and we run from one situation to the next situation. But as far as just the basics of, drinking water, it doesn't happen. You're not supposed to drink behind the desk, but we all snuck coffee.
Yeah.
But that was what kept us going. It was like one caffeine fix to the next. And then you add all that dopamine in there every time something happens. And you know what I mean? Your body is on a cycle of highs, really.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I was so dehydrated when I made the switch from working in agriculture to my current day job and doing this, coaching other women. I worked with a coach myself because I'm like, I want to learn, I want to have a mentor. And one of the first questions she asked me, because one of my complaints was I had migraines. I had migraines where I'd be on the floor for 6 hours in tears and just begging my husband Brandon to go buy me something from the drugstore that could help. And she was like, well, let's look at your water. And she's like, how much water are you drinking each day? And I'm like, sometimes none.
Right.
And then that just smallest switch of just focusing on drinking water, like my migraines don't happen anymore.
Amazing.
Yeah. Like everything changed.
So when we're talking, when I'm talking to people about like the physical health piece, the mental health piece always comes in at the same time because, a lot of this stuff, when we're having trouble finding time for ourselves and exercise and proper nutrition, mental health things can sneak in, and that's one of the things I feel really, really passionate about is mental health. I've started a suicide prevention coalition several years ago. And suicide is one of those words that when people hear it, they kind of are like,
yeah, scary.
It is. It is scary. And I think it's really important that people understand that there's been a lot of research into mental health, a lot of research into suicide prevention. American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is one of those researching entities. And, what we've learned is it's okay to talk about mental health. It's okay to talk about suicide. It's okay to ask about suicidality. It doesn't plant a seed to make anyone want to end their life by suicide.
Yeah, you're not giving them the idea.
Yeah. It's not a dirty word because we were kind of taught that, growing up.
Yeah, don't talk about it.
Exactly.
It's behind closed doors.
Exactly. And what they've learned is that actually contributes to people dying to suicide, that it's okay to talk about our mental health. It's okay to talk about suicide and preventing suicide. And, we've worked really hard. We've got a platform called Credible Minds with some fantastic resources in it. And it has podcasts like what you have here.
Yeah, she was just telling me about it before we started. Yeah, so was that something you started when you did the coalition? You created all this?
We started this right around Thanksgiving time of this year. We started the Credible Minds platform. We've had the Suicide Coalition for quite a while, and we have a ton of suicide prevention programs. We have Talk Saves Lives. We have Safe Talk. We have Assist, which is a 2-day long training helping people with suicidal ideation. But we really wanted something that was web-based.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, because of stigma, people still are hiding behind their phone and looking for resources.
Yes.
I get that completely.
Yeah.
So it's able to, you can do like little assessments for your mental health to see whether or not you need help. And then the second step of this is it's full of local resources to connect you to that help.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
So I'm going to put that definitely in the description, in the notes here too, but it's called Credible Minds.
It is.
So you can just go on and check it out. And you said there's also stuff about like ADHD and stuff on there. We were talking about.
So I have maybe a little thought that maybe I might have some ADHD. If you've ever seen my computer with all the tabs open, there's about 25 tabs open with all these papers all over my desk, and I get interrupted constantly at work. But I thrive on that.
Yeah.
Right? So I thought, well, maybe I have a little ADHD. And it did, in fact, confirm that that is a possibility and that I should seek help. And then it gave me my options that I had for, getting a formal assessment.
Yeah, because how would you know how to go about that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's kind of cool to see it, actually work. And it's on my list of things to do.
Do you ever just, I'm one of those people with all those tabs. Do you ever just get so overwhelmed and you just hit the big X?
No. Never ever thought of that.
I will do that sometimes. I will log onto my computer and it has 25 tabs from the night before open. And I just need a fresh start.
Gotcha.
And I'm not looking at what any of these tabs are. I'm just hitting the X.
So maybe that's your boundaries at work.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, it's too much right now. I just need to shut down.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Good
for you.
It's the little things.
It is.
Yeah.
But I'm a list maker.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll see all those tabs and then I'll be like, okay, these are your top priorities. These are your top 3. You got to shut your door so nobody interrupts you and get this done.
Have you ever heard of Asana?
Like a hot sauna?
Asana?
No.
ASANA.
No.
It's basically a project management software. It's free. You can get a paid version. It's what I use for my coaching business because, like I mentioned here, I work a day job. So I come home and I've got all these ideas and all these things that I want to do. And you can make little, it's hard to explain, but you can make projects.
Okay.
And then within your projects, you can list out what needs to be done inside the project and what the due dates are. And it will compile all your projects into one task list.
Oh, now that's interesting because I have the same thing on paper.
Okay.
Like I have different buckets. So I've got my women's health where we teach birth classes and all of that. So I've got one list for that and everything I need to do for that. Then I've got one list for the Suicide Coalition and everything I need to do for that. Then I've got one list for all of the things that I need to post to social media and the communications piece. But I don't have them all married together in a beautiful
That's what I like
list.
About the Asana and then if you look at your daily tasks and you're like, wow, there's way too much on here, you can kind of rearrange and move around. I used to be a big paper person, but now I'm like, wow, this is too convenient. And you can link documents and notes into your projects. It takes some getting used to, but I think it'd be good even for your daily life.
Yeah, totally.
You got bills to pay, you have a bills category and I
have them all come out automatically because I have, because I have so many tabs open in my brain, I can't keep track of all that.
Automatic bills are that's what I do too. People that still pay their bills manually, I'm like, what are we doing? There's too many other things to think about.
Then I have a panic. I'm like, did I pay that? You don't need to pay that. It's already paid.
Right. Yeah. We need to automate more things. Because one thing I talk about a lot too, even with my husband, is that we were not made to be this busy and to be doing this many things. And especially if we look at motherhood and you have that perspective that I don't have yet. But it's you were just... Back in the day, you were just being a mom and taking care of the house.
Right.
But now you're working full time, taking care of the kids, you're taking care of the house,
working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We weren't made to do all of these things.
Right.
And also to be contacted 24/7 by anybody who wants to get a hold of us.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So I think that plays a lot into mental health problems too.
Absolutely. And I think the other piece of that is, friendships and how important, friendships are and watching each other when it comes to mental health. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because we get overwhelmed. We have a really great circle of mom friends, and poor Lindsay's stuck in with us old birds. But
I'm the only daughter. So how this came to be. Well, I mean, it's been since I was born, basically.
Yeah.
But so we've got a circle of mom friends, and they all had sons. And I was the only girl. So I was like the girl that we got to do all the fun girly stuff with.
That's so true.
So having that support has been huge. I think too, when we talk about like social relationships and stuff,
Yeah.
people are like, well, I don't have a lot of friends. You don't
need a lot of friends.
And actually, I advise against it.
Yeah, you need the ones that are really close that's going to
Yes.
stop what they're doing and come to you if you need them, period.
I don't have time to have 50 friends.
Yeah, and the ones that know if something has changed, your personality
Yes.
has changed, especially when we're talking about mental health, that's super important. There's certain things that we can watch each other for when somebody is struggling. One of the commonalities that I find around suicides is a loss. So that's like a loss of relationship, a loss of income, loss of jobs, a loss of, a friend to suicide. We call that contagion, and it puts everyone around them at a higher risk. So those are things that we can watch for. The other things that we watch for are maybe giving things away, maybe talking about, I have a way out, as women, especially, we have gut feelings, right? And being able to act on that gut feeling and saying, are you having thoughts of ending your life by suicide? And as hard as that is, being that blunt and straightforward, I know it's hard.
Yeah.
One of the trainings that I took, our homework was to go home and say that in the mirror.
Really?
Until you got comfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's so final. It's so hard to say. The other piece of that, and I was not even taught this as a nurse. I had to ask about suicidality, but I was never taught what to do if they say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We were,
Right?
when I was in college, I was an RA, which is a resident assistant. So you're like in charge of a floor
Yes.
if you're not familiar. And those residents, you're in charge of looking out for them. And if you notice things that maybe don't seem right, you're in charge of checking in on them.
Yes.
And we used to have, I forget the name, they had like an acronym that they called it, but behind closed doors.
Okay.
Behind closed doors, BCDs.
Okay.
That was in our RA training. And what we did was, it was super nerve-wracking, especially your first time, but you were split up into groups and you were basically put in these role play scenarios. So one that I was in was I had to go into a room of a resident who I thought might be having some suicidal thoughts.
Okay.
And your peers watch you. Like, you go into a dorm room and your peers sit on the beds and watch you as you interact in this role play scenario, so we can learn from each other.
I'm so impressed that they did that.
Yeah. So mine was, asking the person these questions. The person had pills in their drawer, and I had to ask, and I'd never been put in this situation.
Sure.
Are you planning to use these to commit suicide?
Yeah.
And it was scary, especially being watched by your peers.
Yeah.
But it was really powerful, and we all really learned a lot from it. But yeah, like, what would be your suggestions if someone's like, yeah, actually I am?
Yeah, there's a couple of thoughts within that. One is, it's okay to ask straight out about suicide. It's okay to ask, are you having thoughts of ending your life by suicide? That is the preferred way to do it. We try not to say, are you having thoughts of hurting yourself? Because in their mind, it's not hurting, it's fixing. So we have to be very blunt and very straightforward. Are you having thoughts of ending your life by suicide? If they say yes, you say, what is your plan? And when are you going to do this?
Okay. Is it important to get that when?
Yeah, I like the when, and I like the means, like you said, the pills, the means. I like to know that, because I need to know what to keep them away from while I'm getting them help.
Yeah.
Right? So we want to know the means, we want to know when, and then that helps when I go to connect them to help. When I go to that psychiatric help, I can say, this is my friend, whoever the friend is. She's having thoughts of ending her life by suicide. She has some pills. She's thinking about doing this evening. And then saying to the friend, is this more or less the situation? Getting them to say, yeah, there is an issue. And then you stepping back and allowing them to have that conversation with a professional. Sometimes bridging the two like that and being able to connect people with that warm handoff, that's the difference. You don't want to leave them alone. I'm sure they taught you that, right?
Yep.
From that point on, you guys are, as long as the scene is safe, you guys need to be together. We're very lucky here that we have a program called CPEP,
Okay.
which is a crisis psychiatric emergency program. It's through Clifton Springs.
Okay.
And you can actually call up the phone number to their emergency room and ask for a telehealth visit and put your friend right on the phone with a counselor like within that 5 minutes. They can have that discussion. You provide the warm handoff like what we talked about. You stay with the person, and then the counselor is able to make that assessment of if they need to come into the emergency room in Clifton, or if they can hook them with outpatient help.
Now, how do you go about it if the person says, no, I'm fine?
I love that question.
You don't have to do anything.
I love that question. You stay with them, you continue to talk with them, and you come back to the question. And you show them evidence of what it is that you're seeing.
Okay.
I am seeing that you're giving your stuff away, and that concerns me. That's what happens when people are thinking about suicide. My gut is telling me that there is something really happening here, and I'm trying to connect you to help. And here's the thing about suicidality. The person that's having thoughts of suicide can be talked out of it. There's some ambiguity happening there, which is interesting. Have you ever heard of Kevin Hines?
I don't think so, no.
Fascinating case. Totally
Okay.
fascinating. So he lives in California. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He was in and out of the foster system, was eventually was adopted by a family there. And he suffered with suicidality. He's a motivational speaker. We've brought him to Canandaigua twice. And
cool.
yeah, he's really cool when you talk to him. Now, his plan was to end his life by suicide, but if somebody asked if he was okay, he wasn't going to do it. Perfect example of changing his mind very easily. So he was on a bus on the way to the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay, he was going to end his life. Crying, sobbing on this bus on the way to Golden Gate Bridge. And people could see that he was crying. At one point, he locked eyes with the bus driver. And he thought to himself, if he asks if I'm okay, I'm not going to do this.
Wow.
And they were at the top of the Golden Gate Bridge, and the bus driver locks eyes with Kevin, and Kevin thinks, okay, this is the moment. I'm not gonna have to do this. And the bus driver says, "You getting off the bus or what, buddy?" He's sobbing. This poor guy is melting down. He's sobbing. So he gets off the bus. He has his hands on the end of the edge of the bridge, and he's sobbing still. And he thinks, if anybody asks if I'm okay, I'm not going to do this. Somebody came up behind him. It was a tourist, and he gives this you have to hear him do the accent because it's kind of funny. But he gives they tap his shoulder and they're like, "Hey, buddy, will you take our picture?" And as he's being tapped on the shoulder, he's thinking, "I'm not going to have to do this because somebody's going to ask if I'm okay."
Now, do you think
he changed his mind?
Yeah.
He jumped, and as he was leaving that bridge, he changed his mind.
Wow.
Yeah, and I hear that time and time again from people that have lived through a suicidal crisis. They change their mind. They can be talked out of it. And that's what we find. That's what the research finds. If they have that one person they can connect with, that one person that's going to say, we're going to get some help, it's going to be okay. They don't go back to trying to end their life by suicide.
Yeah.
And you hear me dance around the word commit. You kind of heard that a second ago. There's a reason I do that. We try not to use commit suicide.
Okay.
Because of mental health. It's all mental health. It's all a chemical imbalance. We don't say someone committed cancer or they committed a heart attack.
Right. That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
It's part of that. We're trying really hard to decrease stigma.
Yeah.
But you still hear it all over. But I'm a one-woman band that is trying to erase the word commit.
Yeah. I mean, there's such a stigma. And we had discussions on that when I was in the agricultural field in college because, and we tie it back to farmers. And even though I'm not in ag anymore, I've learned so many lessons from being in that field.
Sure.
That, that we've already talked about, just working and not asking for help. And we had a lot of discussions on how can we get people who feel like they should be able to do this. Like, they should be able to have a handle on it. They feel smart. They feel capable. Or they are. They are smart. They are capable. You know, they are super productive. But they feel like they should be able to do this without help.
Right.
You know? And I feel like sometimes we just need, like, a little, just, you know, somebody to reach out. And
have you ever heard of FarmNet?
Yes, that's something we talked about a little bit in college, but you probably have more valuable insight on what
FarmNet
it
is really a cool program. That one is specifically for farmers, and they will bring mental health counseling right to the farm.
Okay.
They also help with financial, if you're having financial issues within your farm itself, and you know you need some thoughts and help getting through financial crises. They help with that too. It's really kind of cool. And I, you know, this is probably I think that's the first time I've actually mentioned counseling, and I think that's a good thing to talk about. You know, most of us at least will go to the doctors once or twice a year, right? And get like a physical checkup. But what if we were to flip the stigma switch and we got a checkup from the neck up once a year?
Yeah, I like
right?
that checkup from the neck up.
Yeah, that's what
sticks
I call
in
it.
your head.
Exactly. Well, literally in your head, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what if you went to a counselor and debriefed once a year?
Yeah.
Talked about what worked, what didn't work, and then just talk about trying to get tools to put in your toolbox, right? Those things that you can do when you are struggling and when you're stressed, and ways to work through that. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've seen a lot more about therapy even too, kind of on the same track, being a little bit more destigmatized, I think.
I think so too.
Have you ever, I mean, are you comfortable sharing? Have you ever gone to therapy or tried therapy?
You know, I haven't, but I have a lot of friends that have. And I am not opposed to it at all. I know people that have done it. I think it has a huge help with people, especially when it comes to the boundary piece. I like to see people take kids to therapy.
Okay.
Especially teenagers, once or twice. I think that's really important because that gives them a tool later on. I went to a therapist, you know, I've had kids tell me before, you know, I went to a therapist when I was like 12 or 13. I guess it's not so scary. Because as adults, sometimes we build things up bigger than in our head than what they really are. So I think it's really important to make that the norm as kids are growing up, you know, especially when we're starting to see stress in kids. And we see that a lot of kids being really stressed in school.
Yeah, we push kids hard.
We do.
I think.
We do. And they just went through a huge thing with COVID.
Yeah.
You know? You ever heard of risk and protective factor survey? You ever heard of that?
I don't think
you might have taken it, actually. Now that I say that, you might have taken it. In high school, did you ever have to take like this long survey that was about your mental health? Do you remember doing that?
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah. They do it in junior high in like certain increments, and they do it in senior high. And one of the things that they learned, especially during COVID, is kids were having a hard time feeling connected.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're both at home, obviously, and at school, they were having a really hard time feeling connected. And all of those things sort of assess something called ACEs.
Okay.
So adverse childhood experiences.
Okay.
It's a series of like 10 questions, and it can predict whether or not you're going to have major mental health issues in the future.
Oh, wow.
Whether or not you're going to be incarcerated. Whether or not you're going to have cancer.
Interesting.
All based on stress that you had as a child.
Wow.
All based on these 10 questions. And it's things like, did you feel safe at home? Did you have enough to eat? How many times did you move? Did anyone belittle you? Were they mean to you growing up? How was your relationship with your family? But what they've learned is, you know, some people have had really hard childhoods, but yet into adulthood, they excel and they're doing really well, where other people have had really hard childhoods and then they haven't done well. You know, they've ended up incarcerated, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is the difference between the two? And they found that one person to count on, if they have one person in their life, back to your friend group, right?
Right.
That one person that you can count on to feel connected to, that's the antidote.
The connection.
The connection and watching each other for those hard times, right?
Yeah, it reminds me, there's this one story, and I think it probably came from health class when I was in high school, when we had our unit on suicide. And it always stuck in my head, this one story, and it was about this boy. I don't know how old he was, but he was cleaning out his locker.
Okay.
Like you said, giving away his things,
heavens. Yes.
cleaning out his locker, and he was carrying all his books to the bus. And this was like the day before he was going to end his life, right? I avoided saying
I'm
commit.
So proud of you.
Did you see that? I was going to say it because that's what we've been talking about.
It is what it is. Ending the life, period.
Yes.
This is permanent. And when we talk to kids, they need to understand that is a permanent act.
Yeah. And so this was the day before, and he's carrying all his books to the school bus. He's just cleaned out his whole locker, and he drops all his books all over the sidewalk. And this is a kid that feels like he has no connection, no friends in school. Nobody's going to care.
Right.
And he drops all his books all over the sidewalk. And one kid comes and helps him pick up his books. And that changed everything.
Interesting, isn't it?
And I always remembered that story because I'm like, you never know what one thing that you do for somebody can change everything.
Boy, if that's not the Kevin Hines story all over again, isn't it? I know. It's interesting. It's that feeling of connection is just so important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And we also just need to be nicer to people.
Amen to that.
Can we say that?
We can.
Why are we all so mean to people?
I know.
I think that's one negative of social media. I think it's just so much easier to be mean to people.
Agreed.
Do you see social media having a big impact in the suicide cases that you're looking at?
Oh, that's a great question.
I always like to talk about social media.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I do think it pulls people back into the shell and gives them less connections socially in some cases. Mm-hmm. In other cases, I think in the case of like support groups, I think it's very, very helpful. In the case of like telehealth and connecting people to therapists in the privacy of their own home, especially in rural areas where we don't have as many therapists as we need.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a role for technology there, and I think that's really important. But that's a really great question. I don't know. I don't know how much study has been done on that.
Yeah, I think we can leverage. I think if you use social media and technology to your benefit, you can leverage it the right way. I mean, like using these resources, these online resources we've talked about, connecting, with those strong friendships and bonds and maybe a therapist, And I think a lot of us think that we don't need to do any of this until we're broken.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like it's our last resort.
Yes.
But I feel like it was kind of destigmatized a little bit.
Agreed.
And we just started working on these things.
Agreed. And I think too, we're, especially in a rural area, we have to think sometimes out of the box when it comes to getting help. So there's a program called 211. I don't know if anybody's heard of that one, but that is like a resource website. You can call them and they can help you find mental health treatment in your area. There's telehealth, like if you have Blue Cross and Blue Shield, for instance, if you get online and you look up telehealth, there's the ability to do it right from your home, like what we talked about.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And then in those crisis moments, that 988 number, suicide prevention hotline, has gone from like a huge long number right down to little 988. I love it. It's so wonderful. That's actually answered. Those phone calls, those crisis calls, are actually answered in Canandaigua at the VA.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And in some ways, that's kind of a selling point for some of the people I talk to because it's local.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not like talking to some person in, I don't know, across the country.
Exactly.
If you're from around here.
Exactly.
And then the other thing that we talked about before we started recording was that your workplace might have resources for you that you might not even know about.
Oh, I love that. I had forgotten we had talked about that. Yeah. Employee Assistance Program, or EAP, many work sites have that. And you can have like 5 to 7. The dog is she ran in with her toy. She really was excited to show us. You can have like 5 to 7 different counseling visits that don't cost anything. And it's not just for the employee. It can be for the employee's family. Because,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
I think it's important to mention because it's going to affect your workplace, right? If your kids are struggling, if your husband is struggling, if you have something happening within your family, it will affect your work.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to ask at your work site and see what's available.
Yeah, I think work is like tying in more than ever to the rest of our lives. Like, I feel like it used to just be a lot of the time, like the husband went to work and he did his job and came home. And I mean, it could be flip-flop too,
Sure.
nowadays. But I feel like our job is more tied into the rest of our lives more than ever. And we need to, use these resources, and the benefits we have at work they don't end with your paycheck.
That's a good point.
We've talked, I mean, obviously health insurance, that's like a common thing, but I think we need to kind of encourage our employers, and if they don't have something, I mean, just encouraging eating lunch.
Right.
Like, can I have a lunch break every day to sit down? Because this is going to help me perform better for you anyway.
Yeah. And then making your own boundaries, like you talked about earlier, and saying, okay, I'm going to shut my door and have my lunch. You're going to leave me alone.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
entitled to this lunch, and you're going to leave me alone.
Yeah. Like, I think sometimes if I would just ate lunch at work, that would have gone such a long way.
Right.
And you start to maybe not perform as well, and you start to forget things.
Well,
and
your
then,
blood sugar's off,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, absolutely.
So I think
And that could have been
leveraging-
dangerous for you in the long run.
Definitely.
You're
Well,
in
there
with
was
really big animals, and
yeah.
that could have been really dangerous for you.
There was one time where I did pass out at work because I was not eating and fueling my body. And I ate to survive. Like, I ate the mini cupcakes that came in to the break room table. Like, as I was working, I was
Inhaled.
eating. Yeah,
That's
just
called inhaled.
inhaling mini cupcakes. And I still see those mini cupcakes to this day. And I'm like, yeah, I got memories of those cupcakes. That was just like one of the things we had often as like a treat at work. But I wasn't we keep going back to like just the basics. And then, so I think, you guys, there's the basics, and then we've talked about the next level of that.
Right. But
with the
can we
mental health.
add checkup from the neck up to the basics?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that
So-
needs to become a basic.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So just like you go and you get, mammograms, PAPs, get your blood pressure taken, all of that.
Yeah.
We have to have the ability, and I'm the worst one, I'm working on it, to, do that, to go and have that debrief and just make sure that you're okay and that you have the tools psychologically to handle the stressors that may come, down the road.
Yeah. And like I always I tie back to work and home. Like when you're at work, you have meetings, you have constant checkups and deadlines and things. And then you go home and it's just kind of like a free for all. And we're not really taught about like, how do we check in on things otherwise? How do we check in on our bodies? Like, we had health class in school, but like, we're not taught really like, how do we check in with ourselves to make sure we're doing all right?
Right.
Right. It's just like graduate and go off into the world and survive. Like, hope you survive.
Basically,
you know what
yeah.
I mean?
Basically.
Like, you're not taught about like stress. You're just told like, get a good job and be successful.
Yeah.
You know? And
if you go to college, everything will be fine.
exactly.
Yes.
It's not the case. That is not the case. That is what you're taught. And then you find yourself in these very adult situations, and tying it back to suicide, we never really think you're going to, a lot of people just pass it off. We don't want to talk about it. And we think, well, maybe that won't happen to me, or that won't happen to someone I know. But you've seen it happen.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I have. And the other piece of this, too, when we're talking about women is, in a lot of cases, we are the head of the household. So, we need to understand and learn those signs to make sure that nothing's happening within the guys in our lives as well, right? They're at the highest risk. Everybody thinks it's the teens, but it's really the men. They're at the highest risk. And also at the same time, you have teens, like what you're saying, that are struggling, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to be in the boat that is, charting this course and pulling everyone forward, trying to watch for your own mental health, your spouses, and your kids at the same time.
Yeah.
How do
you're not taught how to do that.
No.
And I'm gonna give Christy homework, and I'm gonna make her list out all these resources she gave me,
I got lunch for you that you can put on there.
So I can put them in the description, and I have them all correctly in the description. Is there anything else that we're missing or that you want to hit on in our podcast today?
I think that we need to really give ourselves some grace. I think that's really my theme for the last month or so is, giving yourself some grace. You don't have to be perfect all the time. You don't have to be on all the time. It's okay to make these boundaries.
Yeah.
It's pivotal that you make boundaries and that you make time for yourself.
Yeah, I think that that giving yourself grace is something that I always am still working on.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, well, you always feel like everything's just gotta fall in line. Like I have to be the healthiest version of myself, and I have to be the best in my career, and I have to be the best, wife or mother or sister, or it's like you can't be perfect all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we feel like we have to be.
And what would really happen if you weren't perfect? Like if you know what I mean? Like that would be okay.
Yeah, well, sometimes, we talked about too before we started recording, is both of us have always, or I don't know if always, but felt like we could just work all the time.
Yes.
We could just
have a very hard time shutting it off at 5:00. Absolutely.
Yeah, and some nights I'm like, but what if I did just shut my laptop until tomorrow? Is anything urgent that needs to happen tonight? Can I sit down and watch some TV with my husband and feel connected with him? What's going to happen?
Right.
And usually the answer is nothing's cannot wait until tomorrow.
But that's still success, right?
Yes.
That's still success.
Yeah.
Is making time for your husband. Okay, we can check that box.
Yeah.
Right? We helped him feel connected. We felt connected to him. That's a positive for my relationship.
Yeah.
That is still success.
Yeah, and you're not saving your relationships for the weekends.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you save your relationship for the weekend, and I'm not going to do the math, but that's a very small percentage.
True.
That you end up building those connections. And I even think things we need to do things like book clubs and as adults, as kids, we kind of have sports and some things, and not all kids feel connected in those ways. But then you get to be an adult, and it's you work and you go home, and it's how are you building connections and enjoying your free time? You know?
Right.
I think we have to almost connect with our inner child more sometimes.
They call that play.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, the art of play.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Coloring. That's a huge thing right now. I don't know if you can hear the dogs, but they're wrestling.
They're at the art of play right now.
Yeah, they're at the art of play. I would shut my door. I'm sure people wonder, why don't you just shut your door? And it would be worse because they would scratch at the door and then whine. So hopefully the mics are cutting a lot of that out. But they always just choose when I'm recording something to play. But yeah, I think this has been a really great episode. Really, there's a lot of good information and resources in here. And even if it's not something that you feel like you need some help with at the moment, it's something that I want you to come back to,
right.
And it's going to be here as a resource. You can listen multiple times, you can ask questions. If you comment a question, or you can comment on the podcast or on my Instagram. I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube now, I'm on all the things. You can comment a question if you want to ask Christy something, and I will relay it to Christy, and then we will get your question answered. I think she'd be okay with that.
She would be.
Okay. we got the confirmation. So do you have any final thoughts, words, anything that's popping into your head? Not
really. Just, give yourself grace and watch out for each other. Watch out, watch out for yourself as well.
Yeah. I think this has been great. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
I got to go get my checkup from the neck up.
Oh, you do? Is that what you're on your way to do?
No, but I should.
Yeah. So we're reminding ourselves too, as we talk about things.
Yeah, that's true.
So, all right. Well, thank you for being here, and I will let the outro play. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Balanced Hustle podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Be sure to leave a review or share with someone who needs a little extra balance in their hustle. For more tips, tools, and resources to help you reclaim your energy and build the strong, vibrant life you deserve, follow me on Instagram at LindsaySherman_fitness. And don't forget to subscribe here so you don't miss a single episode. Until next time, remember, progress is always better than perfection. Keep taking those small steps. They'll tell you exactly where you need to go. Talk soon.